like to call the meeting to order. If you all would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, welcome everybody. We're not used to seeing this many people, so good to have you all here. First item on the agenda tonight is the swearing in of Joseph, how do you pronounce his name? Tyminski. He's volunteered to be a commissioner here on the board, so we appreciate your service.
Okay. Mr. Tyminski, if you'll put your right hand on the Bible, please, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Joseph Tyminski,
Do proudly swear
do proudly swear
to carry out the responsibilities
to carry out the responsibilities
of the office of
the office of
Planning Commission
Planning Commission
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
freely acknowledging
freely acknowledging
that the powers of this office
that the powers of this office
flow from the people
flow from the people
I am privileged to represent.
I am privileged to represent.
I further swear
I further swear
always to place
always to place
the public interest
the public interest
above any special
above any special
or personal interest,
or personal interest,
and to respect the right
and to respect the right
of future generations
of future generations
to share the rich historic
to share the rich historic
and natural heritage
and natural heritage
of Delaware. In doing so,
In doing so,
I will always uphold
I will always uphold
and defend
and defend
the constitutions of my country
the constitutions of my country
and my state,
and my state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a mouthful.
I know. Started to think about it.
All right, the next item on the agenda for tonight is the approval of the agenda. And I'm going to defer this over to Dennis. We have a change to the agenda.
Previously scheduled on this agenda for this evening was a review of plans relating to the Ocean View Beach Club identified as application P258 and P260. We received a letter sometime before 1 o'clock this afternoon from K. William Scott Esquire of Scott and Schumann, who is the attorney for the applicant. And I'll just take a couple minutes to read this, if you don't mind. It says, Dear Dennis, as you know, our firm represents the applicants of the above application submitted for consideration by the Planning Commission for the town of Ocean View. As you also know, the applicants were recently notified by the town that the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to consider the above application as a concept plan review. In reviewing the content of the notice of the hearing that was published, I'm concerned that the notice refers to an amendment to previously approved plans and does not provide notice of a concept plan review. Given the level of interest in this application, the applicants request that consideration of this application be referred to the next available planning and zoning meeting. This will allow time to not only confirm the notice is proper, but also allow the applicants to review this application in light of the concerns of residents that have been provided to determine whether these concerns can be addressed and or mitigated in some fashion, and ultimately to determine whether the applicants will continue to pursue this application or to abandon the proposed change and continue with the project under the previously approved plans. If the town would prefer, rather than defer consideration of this application, that the applicants withdraw this application, and if the applicants so determine to reapply at a future date, then please consider this letter as such withdrawal. Thank you for your time and consideration. In consultation with the chairman, the director and I spoke about this letter, and the chairman is going to defer action on 258 and 260 until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission. I know there are a lot of you who, by the way, there was a notice immediately posted on the website, which we hope got to all of you. And I've also been told by some people that this also was sent to all the people who live in Ocean View Beach Club. But if for some reason you are here and you didn't get the notice, or you didn't hear what I just read, or you haven't learned yet, we will not be considering the Ocean View Beach Club application this evening. It will be deferred to the next regularly scheduled meeting. All right?
All right, thank you, Dennis. All right, so the next item, I guess, is the approval of the balance of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and the next item is approval of the minutes of the January 20th meeting. Unfortunately, we do not have those minutes with us prepared tonight, so we will defer the approval to the next meeting. All right? All right, well, that brings us on the agenda to application P-261 Silverwoods. Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Ocean View will review the concept plan for the creation of a single-family villa district in the mixed-use planned community of Silverwoods. This application is submitted as revision to application 261 by Becker Morgan Group, Inc., on behalf of the property owner and developer, Mr. Robert Thornton, Silverstock WP LLC, for property identified on the Silverwoods record plat as Commercial District Parcel A, CTM 134-16.00-914.00, multifamily Parcel B, CTM 134-16.951.00, and a portion of mixed-use district Parcel C, CTM 134-16-45. Silverwoods is owned as a mixed-use planned community located along Beaver Dam Road. With that, Ken, you want to, or Jeff, you want to take it from here?
Sure.
We have two announcements to make before we begin, okay? The first one is that this is the time and place for a scheduled hearing on, I believe we're going to deal with Silverwoods tonight. You correct me if I'm wrong. This application will be considered under the proceedings that are provided for under the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission will discuss all of its matters in an open meeting and will vote publicly if voting is permitted on the particular application. All persons in attendance should conduct themselves in an orderly fashion. No applause or other disruptive behavior is permitted. Please do not do anything that distracts from these proceedings and follow the directions of the chairman or the presiding officer. If you have a cell phone, pager, or some other electronic device, this is a good time to turn it off so that we don't hear any ringing noises. If it does go off, and I actually was in a meeting this week where it happened, somebody picked it up and started their conversation with the person on the other line. We don't want to do that, okay? So this is a good time to turn it off. The way the hearing will be conducted this evening is that the application will be announced by the chairman. The director will then give a review of the application and any comments from agencies that have jurisdiction over the application. If they've been received to date, then the applicant will have the opportunity to present the application to the Planning and Zoning Commission and may present any exhibits or witnesses that it may have to support its application. The commission may question the applicant and its witnesses. Then we will invite public comment. We will have people go, supporters go first, followed by opponents. If there is a spokesman or an attorney representing an organized group, we ask that you go first. Please identify yourself by name and address for the record. Be concise in your statements and avoid being repetitious. The chairman does have the authority to set reasonable time limits on public comment or to terminate testimony that is irrelevant or unduly repetitive. If we have 5 people get up and say it's Thursday night, it's no more Thursday night than it was at the beginning if 5 people say it. So keep that in mind. The commission may ask questions of supporters and of opponents. There is no direct questioning of witnesses permitted, and all questions should be directed to the commission to see if the commission wishes to refer the question to the applicant. And the one other thing I want to tell you is that this is a concept plan review, which is being pursued pursuant to section 104-102 of the Land Use and Development Code of the town of Ocean View. A concept plan is a drawing of a development plan of sufficient accuracy to be used for discussion only. Prior to submitting a preliminary development plan, a concept plan is to be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission to be used as the basis for discussion and to receive direction on preparation of the preliminary plan, but not for approval or disapproval. So that is what we will be doing with the Silverwoods project tonight. I would also point out, before we get too far down the line, many of you apparently have internet service. And I'm going to remember this the next time somebody comes in and complains about MediaCom. That, yeah, it works. We have to date received somewhere in the neighborhood of about 125 pages of emails or letters from various members of the public who wish to have their thoughts on this particular project communicated to the Planning and Zoning Commission. All of this has been submitted to them for their review in advance of this meeting tonight. If you submitted if you submitted an email, it's not necessary for you to get up and say, "My name is John Jones, and I submitted an email this morning," and then restate what they've already read. Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Lober, who is going to give the review on behalf of the staff.
Okay. One point that I would like to point out, to avoid some confusion, is that due to the fact that this plan is proposing a change to an originally approved MXPC plan, there are code requirements that require that a technical advisory committee be convened to review that plan. So a technical advisory committee was convened. We reviewed the plan. We made comments. The applicant came back and revised their plan. So the letter that I'm going to read to you tonight is my review of that revised plan. So that way there's no confusion. You'll hear me refer to comments new to this review. Okay. All right, so, sure. All right, so as far as the comments new to this review are concerned, number one was provide a copy of the proposed documents pertaining to the establishment and maintenance of the homeowners association, as well as its bylaws, fee schedule, and ability to assess for the upkeep and maintenance of the common elements. Number two, please note the proposed walking paths shown for the Villa District should connect to the yet-to-be-constructed paths shown on the approved landscape plan for the single-family district near the clubhouse and the pump station parcel. All of the paths within the residential portions of the MXPC will be required to be completed prior to the release of the performance guarantee for the Villa District. Number three is a landscape and screening plan will be required for the new plan. Moving on to the comments that were addressed from the original letter. Pittston Drive from the intersection with Luzerne to Beaver Dam Road will be required to be built in its entirety in conjunction with this project. No construction traffic will be permitted to access the multifamily parcel through the recently completed single-family portion of the project. The plan was revised to address that comment. Number two, the layout was not in keeping with the intent of the planned community district to create a superior living environment. Section 140.51 Design Standards, paragraph D, states that planned communities design should integrate a variety of housing dwelling types in a way that provides architectural diversity. Housing types should be interspersed to avoid monotony and segregation by dwelling type. Accordingly, no single housing type should dominate either the planned community as a whole or any one section of the community. Also, section 187.1 Street Improvements, paragraph A, states that the street layout should be designed to create desirable building sites while respecting existing topography, minimizing street grades, avoiding excessive cuts and fills, and preserving streets and other natural features to the maximum extent possible. Thoughtful and imaginative design of streets and their relationship to the arrangement and shape of lots is required. An important element is the blending with topography to produce curvilinear design and reasonable grades. The rectilinear design of the streets and lots involving large straight sections of streets should be avoided. We feel that in their revision of the plan, they came back with a layout that did indeed avoid the rectilinear design, provided some curvature to the streets, and spread the open space out. So we believe that that comment has been addressed. As far as the MXPC requirements are concerned, the number of units currently proposed is 170. Subtracting the existing 111 single-family units and the proposed 170 villa units from the total of 444 units will leave a maximum of 163 potential units for a future mixed-use phase. Number two, the revised plan meets the overall area requirement for open space. Provide a list of the specific items to be included in the active open space areas. Number three, the revised plan now calls for 17.37 acres to be dedicated to commercial uses. This meets the 25% minimum for areas dedicated to that purpose. Number four, the lot layout will need to be revised so that no building can be built within 40 feet of the perimeter property line. Currently, there are some lots with a rear yard setback less than 40 feet from the perimeter line. Regarding off-street parking, the code requires 2 parking spaces per residential unit, not including spaces in garages. The number of units proposed is 170. This results in 340 parking spaces required. The overflow parking requirements within residential developments require an additional 10% for developments over 10 acres. This would bring the overall total number of parking spaces to 374. The plan doesn't currently show any parking. Revise the plan to depict the required parking. Regarding the dimensional regulations, please provide the proposed square footage of each unit on the plan. Regarding utilities, show a conceptual sanitary and water main layout as well as the proposed tie-in points to the systems on the plan. Regarding stormwater management, provide justification from the Sussex Conservation District with regard to the statement included in general note number 13 about the stormwater management regulations. Regarding fire marshal approval of the layout will be required. The town will default to the fire marshal for review of the plan for compliance with the Delaware State Fire Prevention Regulations. Please provide copies of the correspondence with the fire marshal during their review of the plan. Regarding streets and sidewalks, the original comment was that a rights-in, rights-out only entrance along Pittston would not be allowed. The town will defer to DelDOT's requirement for a minimum distance from Beaver Dam to the first intersection on Pittston, but at that point, a fully functional 4-way intersection will be required for access to the villas to the west and to the commercial area to the east. The plan was revised to include this, to address this comment. And comment number 2 was that dead-end streets would not be allowed. An appropriate code-compliant turnaround would be required. And again, the revised layout did indeed address that comment. That's all we have.
Okay.
These comments were all provided to Mr. Ryman.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Ryman, you've received them?
Yes.
Do you all have any questions, Mr. Lober, before we dig into the applicants?
I have a question. Is that in that number 2 that you just went through there on the general section?
Yeah.
The 140-51, I mean, what's the overall conclusion there? Is that, I mean, it seems like there's some aspects that have been issues or whatever. Do you consider all of that resolved and that meeting that aspect of the code?
As far as the rectilinear design and the
What about, I'm talking about the planned community aspects of it.
well, as resolved as it can be, given the foundation that was laid with the original approved plan.
Okay.
I recognize that, if I can read it real quick, housing types should be interspersed to avoid monotony and segregation by dwelling type. Ideally, you would have some towns and some villas mixed in with some singles. You know, I think that's what that comment, that language probably had in mind originally. The way that this was approved back in, I think, 2014 or whatever it was, is we ended up with a large single-family section, and then the plan was set up in blocks so that there was a parcel A that was to be developed as multifamily, and a parcel B that was to be developed as commercial, and a parcel C that was to be developed as multi-use, mixed use. So within that structure, I do believe we have addressed that comment to the best of our abilities, essentially, yes.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions of Mr. Lober? Before we begin, there were a couple people that strolled in after we started this evening, and for those of you who are here for the Ocean View Beach Club matter, it has been deferred to the next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. There also is a sign-in sheet. The last time I saw it, it was drifting around the front. It's in the back. If you'd be kind enough to sign in. The chair recognizes Mr. Thompson, who is the attorney, and Mr. Ryman, who is the engineer for the applicant. Which one of you handsome gentlemen is going to go first?
Good evening. For the record, Mike Ryman, Becker Morgan Group, 309 South Governors Avenue, Dover, Delaware. And before I get started, I'm going to get the board put up. Ken told me to put it here on purpose so that it blocks my back. No, I'm just kidding. So, you know, I appreciate everyone's time this evening and the opportunity to present to the board in person and seeing all these good folks here together in person. And it's good to be back here. And I don't think I've seen Ken in person in a couple of years or Jim. So just really great to be back, I'll call it. So this project, you know, has been around a long time, over a decade actually. It was annexed back in 2011 when the MXPC was, when it was zoned MXPC, which is a mixed use, mixed use plan community. That's what it is. And so back then, on August 13th of 2011, per ordinance 282, the 117 acres for Silverwoods that you see outlined in the various colors on the board were annexed into that zone. And what the MXPC zone is all about is planned community and mixed use. It has some criteria. For example, you're allowed up to 4 units per acre, gross density throughout. So the maximum density for the entire job would be 459 dwelling units based on that. But you have to have between 25 and 50% commercial within the community. Single family has to be at least 25% of the community. And you have to have a minimum of 40% open space. So all of these criteria together are what create the balance of the community. So after the annexation in 2011, a concept plan was submitted and was heard at the June 21 of 2012 Planning and Zoning hearing. And that plan consisted of 112 single-family units, 348 multifamily units, about 100,000 square foot assisted living facility, and about 34 acres of commercial. And so, you know, if you look at the plan that I have on the board, the orange was the single-family district, which is consistent with what it is today. The blue is essentially the commercial, and the yellow was the multifamily. That was the original plan back in 2011 and 2012. That was reviewed and approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And what we're here tonight to talk about is a concept to revise that approved plan that has gone through some iterations based on some feedback that we've already heard from the community, based on some review that we've gotten from the town. And that's how we've gotten here tonight over actually the last couple of years. It's not been a quick process, but it's been a good process. So after the concept plan was approved in June of 2012, we submitted a preliminary plan that was submitted in February of 2014. And you know, the process consists of concept, preliminary, final. So concept was done, concept was approved. We then submitted a preliminary plan, which was the next step, and it was largely the same, although it was 112 single family, 192 multifamily units, same as 100,000 assisted living. The commercial was a little bit less at 33 acres. That application was heard at the March 20, 2014 Planning and Zoning hearing and was approved. From that point, we then progressed with the final engineering of what is now the single-family portion of the project. In doing so, they actually reduced it by 1 lot, went from 112 lots down to 111, and the plan was ultimately recorded. So just kind of walking through where we are now is amending what was done originally to something a little more like that, just in terms of base area. We'll get into the details of the design, but you know, essentially the single family in the orange stays the same. The multifamily goes away, and the commercial is reduced. And the multifamily and commercial are largely replaced with villas, essentially townhome-style villas. And that now represents the new acreages that would be throughout the community. And the acreages, again, as I stated when I started, are important because the code dictates what those acreages are and what those percentages need to be. And that is what we are following. So fast forward, sometime in, I think, 2020, and let me go back before I get to that. The original plan itself was essentially that. So that's the plan that was presented back in 2011 and 2012. You can see the 112 on that plan, single-family units, largely similar to what's out there now. And you can see the multifamily district, which is here, which would have been in 3 multi-story large buildings. And then you can see the commercial district there in the middle and the assisted living facility down here on the southern side. So that was the plan, and of course this area here in front of the multifamily adjacent to Beaver Dam Road was held out as a future commercial. So that's the plan that was reviewed. That was the plan that was approved at both concept and preliminary plan. Moving forward, a couple of years ago, we looked at advancing the multifamily plan and looked at some options, and we came up with this design, which, is it okay if I talk here, or do I need to be at the mic?
You need to be over
Yeah,
here. Unfortunately, Mr. Ryman, this room, and I know the people in the back will confirm this,
Not good
does
audio.
not have good acoustics. It's
No worries.
probably dealing with an echo in the back, plus we have Zoom participants, so
Understood.
we need to keep it close to the mic.
So, roughly in the fall of 2020, when we looked at, progressing what is the next piece of this master plan community, the single family was on its way. The next piece that we looked at was the multifamily piece. And we looked at a project that would have consisted of 7 multifamily buildings of, I believe, 3 and 4 stories range. And the feedback we got was not good. The feedback was not positive. And, we heard the buildings are too tall, we don't want multifamily, we just don't like the scale of it, we'd rather see something else. And so we stopped, and we kind of rethought it yet again. And that brings us to where we are now, and brings us to the villa plan. I don't know about you, but it bugs me that it's crooked, but I'm going to leave it alone because it'll fall. So that brings us to where we are now. So the villa plan. Again, you can see the single-family portion in the back, relatively, obviously the same. Most of it's constructed. The villas are in the lighter green at the top, and also a small section behind the single-family. And so the commercial has been reduced significantly from the original plan. There was 10 acres of commercial to the north of the page there. That has been eliminated in lieu of the villas. And then the commercial district that was in this area here, that entire piece was commercial, has now been reduced to about 12 acres and replaced with villas. We thought the transition of having singles, villas, commercial was a positive versus going from singles directly to commercial. And we thought that was a benefit. So where we are now is the single-family district is about 71 acres. The villa district is about 20.9 acres, and the commercial district is about 21. So a pretty big reduction in the commercial area. So we submitted a villa plan on July 13th, and Mr. Lober's already spoken to some of the comments. It was actually a very gridded design, and the feedback was, look, we really don't like that. We need to have some rectilinear streets, curvilinear streets, and so we did take another crack at that. and the plan that you have before you is a result of that. There were some concerns about dead-end streets, and we addressed those as well. The current plan is, actually I have 169 villas, 170, 169, no big deal. These would be fee simple townhouse, lots. These are not rentals. We do meet the total open space of the community, the 40% requirement for the whole project. And, we do have, this will result in a pretty big reduction in traffic. The other benefit of going from the original plan, which had a lot of commercial throughout, and now this plan with a lot less commercial, is a reduction in traffic. If you compare the two plans together, it's about a 37% reduction in traffic. It's also a significant reduction in the density. If you recall, the multifamily that was approved was 192 units, now 169 over in that portion of the project. So buffers, I read a lot of the correspondence, and there was definitely some concern about the buffers between the Villas District and Forest Landing. Our intent is to maintain the 20-foot buffer there and maintain the forested trees within that buffer, and also add to them. There was some concern, I think, about the buffering between the silver, and I'll just point, but the single-family lots here and the villas there. And in looking at the plan, it does look like we could easily address that and shift some so that we could put a 20-foot buffer between the single-family and the villas. It does look achievable, and we can certainly accomplish that. The other thing, the amenities, obviously there's a pool and a clubhouse. There was a lot of correspondence about amenities, a lot of discussion about amenities. And I think our thought is, look, we're open to hearing what some recommendations are. We showed a tennis court on there. Tennis court's been shown on a plan for a while. We've heard we like a tennis court, we don't like a tennis court, we like other things. We'd like to see something behind there. And so, we're at concept plan. Now's the time to hear those things. And I have no doubt that we can incorporate some of those elements behind the clubhouse area. We show stormwater there, although I will tell you, I think that's probably more than we need in that location. Again, we're at a concept level review, so we're not in final engineering, so we have to get through that. But I'm relatively confident, based on our experience with the site and knowledge of the stormwater in this area, that we have some room there that we can implement some additional amenities if that is so desired. And then lastly, just to give you an idea of the product that they're looking at here. My OCD can't handle that. So just to give you a sense of the product there, that just gives you a look at that. And actually, this is, again, Beazer is the builder, quality builder. This product's actually at Bishop Landing, a couple miles from here. So you can go and take a look and see, what that looks like in real life, and not just a picture. But again, we are not here tonight creating a new project. We are here tonight amending something that has been planned and for over a decade. We think that the revisions that we're proposing tonight with the villas would be a positive based on some of the feedback that we'd heard to date from both the town and the community regarding the multifamily aspect. So with that, I don't know if there's much more that I want to add, unless Seth, you want to add anything else?
No, I think that covers it. Sorry.
Yep.
Seth Thompson, Parkowski, Gherkin, Swayze, Rehoboth Beach. Thank you for having me. As Mike said, it's good to see people in person. That's nice after the last couple of years. So I don't think I have anything particular to add to Mike's presentation, but I'm happy to answer any sort of questions that the commission has now from kind of the legal department, if you will, or coming off of public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Ryman or Mr. Thompson from the members of the commission?
I have a question.
Sure.
Let me get to the,
Could we, somebody has a phone on, turn it off. Say goodbye.
It's not like we don't have paperwork here. A lot of what I've read, and thank you to the community for your outpouring of your heartfelt feelings. It's very obvious that this hit a lot of people, and it's been good reading for the last couple of nights, I can assure you. And a lot of what I read, one thing is that from the Forest Landing side of the equation is the 40-foot setback and the wooded area that I guess exists there today. I haven't physically walked it, but I guess it's got a lot of big mature trees and that type of thing. And I do like your street layout on your new proposal, but I'm just wondering if, and again, this is a concept, so we can talk about it. If, where you have the proposed stormwater waste area, if that could be flipped over towards Fairway Drive and make that more of a natural area back there and keep it wooded and homes being on top of the property line, that might create a better situation.
Yeah, I mean, we can, that's something we can certainly look at. What's interesting on the landscape, on the tree situation is actually if you were to go back and look at this particular property in 1999, it was clear. The Silverwoods piece was clear. Forest Landing piece was very mature. So, this property hasn't had the mature trees as much over the years. It was cleared originally, and it's had some young growth, and it has matured. But yes, we want to maintain that landscaping in that area. That's really not a problem. We can look at whether or not stormwater's over there. Our discharges are that way. We did plan some stubs and what have you when we were doing the original stormwater and size the pipes accordingly and all of that. So, but we can look at that. That's certainly something we can think about.
What's that?
I have a question for you, too.
All right, Ken has a question for you.
Okay, well, first of all, before I ask the question, I just want to say, too, that the letters were very, very helpful. It's, there's a lot of people that have a lot of detailed opinions and thoughts about it, and it's really hard to come in here and let everybody talk and get through all that. It's just not possible. We do read these things. I've read every single one, with the exception of a few that I couldn't get through that I just got when I came here. So, I think that's a good thing always. One of the things that came up in a lot of the comments that I read was a lot of, besides the things we're talking about now, there seemed like there was a lot of, a track record of a lot of failed commitments in terms of what was going on. So maybe could you, from your view, tell us what you see are commitments that were not met?
If you're speaking to commitments from the builder, the previous builder,
Yeah.
or the,
Well,
yeah.
Well, whatever commitment's been given to these people behind you.
Yeah, I don't know that I can. I don't know, Seth, if you want to handle that, or Bob, but no, I
Because that just concerns me, because, we come in here.
I'm not sure what the commitments are that were.
Huh?
Meaning, if you're talking about commitments Ryan Holmes made when they were selling homes, it's hard for me to speak to that, but maybe
Well,
let.
you own it now. I mean, you're representing it now where it's at, and I heard a lot of stories of people really they feel like they were misled about a lot of things. Things like the size of the pool, the size of the clubhouse, the amount of trees that were gonna be saved. I mean, it's not a good track record, it sounds like,
Yeah, Commissioner, I think, and you started doing it, I think it would be helpful to us if we could identify which of those commitments, people you're speaking about, so that then, as we deal with the project now, we can address those items. We do need to deal with it in the context of the code. I don't know that it's necessarily helpful to kind of relitigate issues or litigate issues, from the past, but rather figure out what we can do better going forward.
Well, yeah, I guess where I'm going though is that, for us to agree that you're talking about, adding some more trees and maybe considering some comments about moving some buffers around, right? My guess, if I was to ask any of the people that are behind you, they would say they don't believe you.
Let me
So-
help gentlemen. We're not gonna do that. We can't, if you guys applaud every time somebody says something you like, that may be your last applause, and we may be continually applauding all night. Let's see how it goes. In order to get to the issues that I think you want raised, give me an opportunity to do this. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Savarkson, I have a letter that was sent to us. It's one of the large stack of letters that was received by the staff and the planning commission, and I think you can tell already that the commission has read many, if not all of these, and digested the contents. But there's a letter dated March 13th, 2022 from Joe and Laura Giorgiani. Are you here tonight? Are either of you here tonight? Congratulations, you're lucky couple number one. You were selected as the letter that we thought best summarized objectively, all of the various things that the vast majority of you had to say about this. So I'm going to read your letter as part of this, so you won't have to get up later on and say you agree with what Mr. Schrader read, okay? And the letter goes like this, and it's to all concerned parties. We feel approval of the concept plan as shown is not in the best interest of current and future homeowners, neighboring communities, or the town of Ocean View. Our three main reasons are explained below for your consideration. We also would like to know that you to know that we truly love our neighborhood, neighbors, and living in Ocean View. We want to ensure our neighborhood is the best that it can be going forward, protecting current and future residents in all aspects. So what I'm going to do, Seth, is I'm going to take this one issue at a time so that I don't give you multiple issues to deal with, and then I'll let you decide which of your staff is going to answer this. The first one is open space amenities. Laura, as CA, which I think is Community Association President, has had multiple conversations over the past year with the developer through our property management company, XL, pertaining to the location of desired future amenities behind the rear property line of the clubhouse. The developer acknowledged this request, but was unable to commit until parcels A, B, and C were designed and the location of Pittston Avenue was solidified. At the June 21 Board of Adjustment hearing, the developer was applying for a variance. During the meeting, a question was asked, and I lost my place. Asked if the variance would have a negative effect on other properties in the area or values of other properties. The developer under oath said obtaining the variance would have a positive impact. He goes on to say, we are going to appropriate part of that area behind the swimming pool for either a pavilion and or pickleball or bocce ball courts that the residents have requested. I have plenty of area behind the pool, so we are going to have some amenity back there for open space and gatherings. The concept plan does not reflect the developer's response of appropriate space for such amenities. However, it does illustrate tennis courts to the west of the clubhouse. There are three reasons why this tennis court, as shown, is not feasible. One, per the as-built drawing, there is not enough land for the tennis court. A tennis court with the safety area around the playing court is 60 feet wide. There is approximately 67 feet between the westernmost concrete walk and Pittston Avenue, but there is a 10-foot easement and 20-foot building restriction line. Secondly, the as-built drawing shows current impervious coverage at 44%. A tennis court has a large impervious surface that would exponentially increase the impervious coverage. And third, even if the tennis court would fit in the area, having it located immediately adjacent to sidewalks and streets on a busy intersection brings other health and safety concerns. Per Ken Semino, the developer owes the community 4 acres of open space, a centralized area of open space that can facilitate future amenities, provides the community with the most benefit, while having a large open space on Beaver Dam Road is a waste of space. Underlined, all of those factors are driving our request for approximately 3/4 of an acre of open space behind the clubhouse on which a tennis/pickleball pickleball court, bocce court, and pavilion can be built versus a stormwater management pond as shown on the concept plan. To summarize, I think Mr. and Mrs. Did I get it right? Giorgiani are looking to know what does the developer propose to do with the open space and the recreational amenities, in particular focusing on the tennis court and possibly bocce, pickleball, and what have you.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. And
That was
Mike's
that was a compound question, wasn't it?
It was, but that's okay, because I'm going to turn it over to Mike to answer. Now,
Okay.
I think he already indicated that, we're not wedded to the idea of a tennis court being there, and we're certainly open to input, but I'll turn it over to Mike, because it sounds like there are a couple technical elements to that question.
Yeah, excuse me, in discussing that particular letter, actually, and with the client in advance, the 3/4 of an acre behind the clubhouse is not an issue at all. Can easily provide that. We can make it part of the record plan, so it's documented appropriately. As it relates to the tennis court, we're completely open to that issue. If the desire is we don't want the tennis court, we won't do a tennis court. If bocce or pickleball is more preferred, heard pickleball is the hottest thing out right now, apparently, then that's fine. So I think we're open to that, and we do think that the amenity space in that area makes sense, and it's still thought of as an amenity and open space area. Again, we're showing stormwater, which we think we would integrate, the final design would integrate the open space and everything kind of together in that particular area. So we're pretty open to some suggestions as to what the particular amenities are in that location, and the 3/4 acre ask is no problem.
I want to give a follow-up question from the Giorgianis. They asked me to ask you, what, if you get rid of the tennis court, will that do to the calculation of impervious surface? I think the limit's 50%, correct?
I'd have to, excuse me, I'd have to investigate that a little bit further. Obviously, it would reduce the impervious surface by eliminating the tennis court.
Are you ready for the second one? Clubhouse and pool. While we understand that the size of and the sharing of the clubhouse and pool with villa owners may be a legal matter between the developer and the community association, we feel this demonstrates that the developer is not holding up his end of the obligation to our community and the town. We are hoping that the town will assist us in this matter by requiring another clubhouse and pool for the villas. Per our public offering statement, the clubhouse was expected to be 3,500 to 4,000 square feet. The concept drawing shows the clubhouse at 3,200 square feet, and the as-built drawing shows it is 2,582 feet. Along with the overall size issue is that the layout of the clubhouse leaves a lot to be desired, as there is much wasted space. Subtracting bathrooms, the kitchen, the hallway, and 2 closets, the clubhouse usable space is 1,612 square feet, which includes the gym, 569 square feet. Therefore, the area just for meetings and gatherings is limited to 1,043 square feet between 2 rooms for our current 140 homeowners. Our pool deck holds 24 chaise lounges and 4 round tables and chairs, or enough for approximately 8 to 10 families. It should be noted that one side of the pool has barely enough space on the pool deck to walk between the chaises and the edge of the pool. A community survey completed the end of last year reflected that expanding the pool deck to accommodate more seating and adding a covered pavilion for those wishing to be out of the sun was a top priority. Underlined, the request for open space behind the pool, as discussed under amenities, would allow for the pool deck expansion. So what we're looking at here is the pool deck, the size of the pool, and I made a quick check mark here in the margin. The clubhouse building apparently has room for currently about 140 homeowners. We're looking at roughly 170 new units being put in here, plus the total units that are already in here. And I suppose this is a question for Mike rather than you, Seth, but if I recall correctly, Mike, the total number of units originally approved is much larger than what all of this would result in. Is that correct?
That is accurate. Yes.
And what's the difference in the numbers? What was the original approved number?
The original concept plan was 112 single-family, 348 multifamily. The preliminary plan, which came after that in February 2014, was 112 single-family, 192 multifamily. So we are now 111 single-family and 169 villas. So
What's the number that we're reducing?
I think we are 23, doing the math on my head, engineers can't do math. Well, it depends whether you're talking about from preliminary plan to now, Mr. Schrader?
Yes.
So 192 plus 112.
And this is what happens when a lawyer asks an engineer a math
It's,
question.
we can't do math.
I know I can't answer it. And he gets a calculator.
It's about 28. I actually had it right.
How many?
I had it right. 28.
So the reduction is how much?
28.
28 units?
28.
This will be 28 units smaller
28.
if built out, right?
Correct.
Okay. You will agree with the Georgianis, that's more than 140, right?
I agree with them what?
That's more, there will be more than 140 homeowners
Yeah,
in the
total,
total of
yeah.
silver. Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Thompson, you were about to answer some questions directed to you about the clubhouse and pool.
Sure, so, and I think the Georgianis have it correct in terms of, kind of separating out or people staying in lanes. So I'm happy to kind of talk offline in terms of the Kiowa issue. I think that's what they're kind of referring to there. But I guess I'll refer back to Mr. Ryman in terms of the ask, if you will. It sounds like there are kind of two elements that we're talking about here, an expansion of the pool deck and then kind of another clubhouse, I think. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Ryman in terms of the engineering on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of the pool deck, I mean, I think that's something we can certainly look at as we progress the plan. We'll have to take, obviously, this information back and evaluate that. As it relates to the clubhouse, what we see in communities typically of this many units is about a 3,000 square foot clubhouse, maybe 3,500. I mean, it's very typical of the size of a clubhouse for this many units. It's not atypical. We would typically not see two clubhouses in a development of this size.
Let me go to the third issue raised by the Georgianis. It's called buffers and trees. The developer has been quoted several times in various media outlets as being a, quote, green builder, unquote. From the Silverstock Builders website to Echo Hamaja Magazine. I don't know what that word is, but I think it got magazine in the middle of it. Yeah, whatever. Echo golly dang. I'm not even gonna try it. EchoHomeMagazine.com. Thank you, I should have read that up. And according to the Coastal Point, he has expressed his desire to keep the trees. All of these resources could influence the town in the approval process and lead home buyers to believe that there will be buffers and trees in our community. Furthermore, the builder sold, quote, wooded lots, unquote, to homeowners charging a lot premium, showing trees on their community maps and stated wooded in their advertising. The concept drawing is completely lacking in buffers between current single-family homes and proposed forest landing and the proposed villas. Underlined again, we are requesting the concept plan be changed to incorporate buffers between existing single-family homes and proposed villas. And let me stop at this point and say, did you give us a landscaping plan at this point?
Not typically at this point, no.
Okay. No, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, as it relates to that, so the original plan that was approved would show the single-family homes backing up to commercial with no buffering. The plan as it is today shows single-family backing up to the villas, and it currently does not show a buffer between the single-family and the villas, but per my presentation earlier, and based on feedback from the letters, we are committed to creating a buffer between the villas and the single-family in that location. I'm just going to point to where we're talking about. We're talking about here. So we're going to move the villas and put a buffer So that'll be part of the next submission.
Okay. Any other response to that particular portion of the Giorgiani's letter? There are
Ken, Dennis, rather?
Sure,
I
go
just
ahead.
had one quick question, is that one of the other things that came up a lot in the letters was the Forest Landing, having some tree buffer there. And I guess it looked in the plans as if that, a lot of that was gonna come out, and there was a lot of concern there. And, I think that's kind of one of the problems with the overall development is, issues with trees and buffer space and things like that, so.
Yeah, that's fine, and that's understandable. And I talked about this a little bit during the presentation, but we do show a 20-foot buffer between the back of our townhome villa lots and Forest Landing. So we are showing a buffer there, where there will be a buffer, and we'll maintain the existing trees that are in that location. Unfortunately, the road there, our neighboring road in Forest Landing was built essentially on our property line there and didn't provide any buffer on that side, unfortunately. But on our side, we can provide at least a 20-foot buffer to be a little wider in some areas where Seth is pointing, so, and it'll remain landscaped.
20 feet buffer between what?
20 feet buffer between our project, the back of our lots.
Okay.
So the back of the lot line.
Yeah.
To the edge of the common line between Forest Landing and Silverwoods, where Mr. Thompson is pointing.
Oh, okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ryman, you're still at the podium, so you get the 5 toss-up questions. You ready?
We get the phone
Other
friend.
issues, I'll take them one at a time, to tell you the truth. Other issues with the concept plan: 2 storm water swales do not appear on the concept plan and will have a direct impact on the location of the lots for the villas. 1 runs behind lots 1 through 12 and at the western end is approximately 25 feet wide, and and at the western end is approximately 25 feet wide. The other is on the southern boundary of parcel B. You want to take up that before I move to the next?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got to do a detailed grading and drainage plan that's part of, our final plans that will get reviewed and approved by the Conservation District. All of that drainage would be taken into account. The Conservation District requires that any project look at any drainage that would be coming onto our site, that we continue that drainage through our site. And that's part of their review process. And that would typically come, at the construction document or later stage of the approval process, not at the concept stage.
Parking calculations are only for 151 villas, yet 170 are on the drawing.
Yeah, we're currently, so each villa would have a garage and a driveway. And that is something, we did get the comment from Mr. Lober and Mr. Semino about parking. And we are looking at some options to provide some additional parking, and that'll be next, part of our next provision.
Streets are privately owned and maintained.
They'll be public.
What does that mean?
They will be Town of Ocean View streets.
And they will be built to Ocean View standards?
Correct.
Sidewalks,
Both sides.
curbs, the whole 9 yards?
Yes, sir.
And bonded.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Lot number math does not add up, and I tried to get that straight already. Do we need to go through that again?
No, it's 169.
It's somewhere between 100 and 500, right? The single-family home calculation doesn't take into account the 29 homes on Brenda Lane as they are in Frankfurt. I'm not sure where Brenda Lane is.
It's
Shut-
Not in the town of Ocean View. The first 30, 29, or 30 lots.
They're not in this project either, are they?
Correct, they are not.
They share in the,
It's okay, but they're not in this project,
Correct,
right?
they are
But
not.
they do share Pittston Drive, right?
No, it's Thornton Drive, I believe.
These homeowners also use our amenities. Uh-oh. Increasing the total number of homeowners using a smaller than promised clubhouse. Sincerely yours, Joe and Laura Giorgiani. Thank you for your letter. I've only read one, and I know that there are a bunch of people out here who would love to come up and say something about this particular project. So I want you to keep in mind a couple things. One of them is, again, there is no vote to be taken tonight. This is for discussion, so you have the opportunity to throw against the wall what you think may stick. If somebody ahead of you has said, I think your lot calculations are wrong, 50 more people getting up don't make them right. So if you can, avoid being repetitious or redundant. And at some point, if I get frustrated, you're going to hear me say, do you have something new that we haven't already heard? So you don't want to be that person, right? So guys, I'm gonna start here in the front row. I don't know of any reason not to. Do you either of you two gentlemen want to comment? Nope? Okay. Mrs. Giorgiani, what? Wait a minute, let me look and see. Does it say P.S. I also want to talk?
No, I was taking some notes.
Would you first off, I'm going to just, I got to have everybody identify themselves by name and address.
Laura Giorgiani, 7 Favata. It's Favata Place.
Have at it.
Some things that we reviewed tonight. One of the things was mentioned that the villas will not be able to be rented. How is that written and how is that going to be held up? So,
I'm going to leave that to Mr. Thompson to answer if he has a specific answer, but generically, a person who owns real property can always rent their property. That means that if, I'm going to pick on your husband because he obviously owns the house you're here complaining about. If Joe decides as the homeowner he wants to rent the house for a year, probably nobody cares. If it's for a full season from, let's say Memorial Day to Labor Day, probably care some, but not as much. When we get to Verbo and Airbnb, I got 100 people out here going to go crazy. So the question is, if I'm asking your question, what does the developer plan to do about covenants on these units that will control the Airbnb Verbo type rentals? Is that where we're going with this?
yes.
Okay. Seth is shaking his head. We're going to see what he's got to say, all right?
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Yeah, in discussing it with my client, the idea is the covenants would have a 1-year minimum lease, so it wouldn't be something short-term, shorter than that. I hope that answers.
And I want to point out, Ms. Giorgiani, and for the benefit of the crowd, one of the comments that was in the letter from Mr. Lober back to the developers engineers is that I've asked for the covenants and stuff to be submitted to me for review ahead of time. And once they get to me, we'll find a way to get them out and about. They'll be a part of the public record for the preliminary site plan if we get that far.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it?
No.
Oh.
I have a few notes. One of the suggestions was taking the stormwater pond and putting it over on Forest Landing side. Personally, it's nice to have it where it is because it keeps that open buffer around the clubhouse of open space and not having villas right on top of the clubhouse. So I'd like to just have that taken into consideration. Maybe 2 smaller ponds, you can figure that out. We talked about the impervious space on the clubhouse. The as-built drawing says currently the parking lot and clubhouse and cement walkways are all 44%, and it says right on the drawing the maximum can be as 45%. So by adding the tennis court right there, you'd be maxing it out. When we were discussing the clubhouse size, I thought at one point they were saying this is currently 169 villas, but I thought, and I could have heard this wrong, it was mentioned that there's potentially more residential villas going in at some point in the future.
This is the last of the residential development, isn't it, Mr. Ryan?
Yes,
okay.
correct. Based on the percentages that we just finished.
Dennis, if I could jump in there real quick.
Sure.
What the original plan included was a mixed-use segment, which would include commercial and residential. So that's the potential remaining residential.
Okay.
Because that, again, would impact the clubhouse being used and the amenities being used. we were talking about the swales and the buffers behind the houses on Luzerne. I'm wondering if, like, the swale at the one end is 25 feet, then you're gonna do a 20-foot buffer on top of the swale? So it would push, at the end closest to the clubhouse, it would be pushing that buffer out about 45 feet? Is that accurate?
I gotta look at it.
Yeah, so it would be the swales plus a 20-foot buffer, correct? Okay, then the other issue is over by the sewer pump station, that first house on Old Forge, they have absolutely no buffer. They're like back to back with those villas right there. It'd be nice to have some, I mean, you're talking about whatever the buffer was over on Forest Landing, it'd be nice if there could be a little buffer added in there as well. You understanding where I'm, okay, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in that row? Next row? Behind them. Anybody on this side? Come on up. I know I called upon the Georgianis. I should have called on the O'Learys or the Fitzgeralds.
I know.
We would have been out of
here
here 30 minutes ago, right?
Diane Baruki, 37112 Fairway Drive. I just have one question in the math situation. The first proposed plan had 170 feet of buffer for us along Fairway Drive. Then we got this nice new plan, and it was 40 feet. And then tonight, the gentleman presenting the plan slipped in 20 feet. So 170, 40, 20, I'm afraid there's going to be nothing. On Fairway Drive. Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to respond? I don't have
Please.
So I would say the buffer's probably smaller in this location here than what we have now, because we're showing 3 large multifamily buildings with a parking lot and a very minimal buffer in that location. And this area was reserved for future commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So now this entire area has become the villas section. The commercial that used to be here is gone, and there's a buffer overlay.
And that's my question, what's the buffer?
It's currently about 20 feet to the back of the lot, not the buildings. We have to meet 40 feet to the buildings. It's 20 feet to the back of those lots.
And how big are the lots?
You get your
Well, that was
chance.
gonna be my next question, how big are the lots? So, I mean, is the house built right on the lot line?
So our typical lot is 100 foot in depth. They have a 20-foot rear building restriction line, so 20 is 40. Most of them don't go all the way back.
Okay, well, any consideration you wanna take for more buffer would be.
Dennis, can I ask her a question?
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Can you explain, you said at one point there was a 170-foot buffer? I've never seen that. Can you tell me where that came from?
When this, when we had when this first rose about, like in 2020, I thought it came back that Forest Landing and had come back and it was like 170 feet that there was gonna be around.
Okay.
So we have some written things about that, whether that's accurate
Got
or
it.
not, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
Thank
you see my concern of 170.
I can
40,
appreciate if
20.
you thought it came back from 170 to
Cor-
20, but I've never seen 170, so that's where I wanted to understand what exhibits essentially you had seen that
Correct.
promised 170.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question, ma'am? And if you do, will you step to the microphone, please, because we're broadcasting this and we have to have your name and address.
I'm part of the Forest Landing community. My name is Jane Bellamy, and I live at 36737 Parr Lane in Frankfurt. And my concern is for Dogleg Court, which I believe is right here. Homes that are jutting up against this border. And what is the buffer here? 20 feet.
Seth, could you put up the plan that's being, the concept that's being discussed?
Right here, between these homes, right
Are there
here.
homes in there?
You can't see them. It looks just the center of the
This is,
Mike, you want to take this one?
Sure. This buffer actually varies from about 20 feet, and it's a little bit wider on this end, probably about 40 feet along that common property line.
so I'm assuming that that desk area is about 20 feet.
But there's also a building setback area that also is involved. What is it there, Ken? 20, so it's 20 plus 20? It'd be 40 feet from the rear of a house located in Silverwood. I'm assuming, but not knowing, because I can't tell from the aerial photos, that the houses that are in your community are at least 40 feet or so from the rear property line. So there might be 60 to 80 feet between housings, the rear of one house and one community in the rear and another.
I don't believe that there's too much in the line of trees there now. You know, I know those mounds are always very nice, like that you see.
Berms. Berms.
All right, well, thank you. I'm
Yeah,
just
you're
trying
welcome, thank you. Anybody else on this side? In the back, gentleman in the blue jacket jumped. Let's do it.
Hi, my name is Steve Maternick. I live at 37249 Brenda Lane, which is in the original section of Silverwoods, which is not in the incorporated area of Ocean View. There are 29 lots there, which we've already discussed, needs to be added to the numbers based for the amenities. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is that Laura Giorgiani and myself had met with Mr. Thornton a number of times to revise the previous plan when he was considering the gatherings built by Beazer. I don't know if that came before this
It
group
did
or
not
not.
come before planning zone.
Okay. One of the things that Mr. Thornton said is that he would consider adding a pool in the clubhouse for that community when it was going to be the gatherings. So I want to know why he wouldn't consider doing that now with the villas.
Mr. Thornton will have to answer that. He doesn't have to at this point, but again, this is for discussion, not,
Correct.
so, Mr. Thornton, Seth, Mike?
I'm not aware of the plan ever having a clubhouse on it that was originally submitted. I don't think we had a clubhouse. I don't know if there was other discussions, but I believe it was part of the plan that was submitted for the gatherings.
When the gatherings came in, the gatherings were extremely high-end condominium, it seemed like the height of the buildings. These would have taken care of their own contained pool and clubhouse because of the budget and the amount of sales price which would justify having something self-contained. The gatherings in Scottsdale, and Charleston are all self-contained. When we got the feedback that although they were a very high-end product, and it wasn't going to be a blended market, we had to go with traditional neighborhood design. And we talked to all the surrounding communities, and if you look at Bishop's Landing, that product seemed like the most acceptable product, as opposed to building nothing at all, which isn't an option. And some folks would like nothing to go in, but the traditional neighborhood design and the documents that followed with the covenants and restrictions and the sizing of that pool and clubhouse is more than ample for the additional 170 units.
Okay, you disagree.
I totally disagree. I can tell you that in the summer of 2019, before COVID, which is actually when the pool and clubhouse were constructed. Now, I'm a resident of Silverwoods. I bought my lot in 2007. Our house was finished in 2010, and we were promised a pool in the clubhouse, and we got it. We got it in 2019. But even before Old Forge was completed with single-family homes, the weekend of July 4th, which is a huge weekend, as we all know, our pool was at capacity, and Old Forge was not yet completed in the single-family area. And now you're proposing, if we wanted to have a meeting today, even before any of this goes on, we cannot use our clubhouse for even a quorum of homeowners to meet. It's not big enough. The commissioner, Mr. Sigvardsson, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
That's actually a good.
One of the other items that we as homeowners have been waiting for, again, myself, since 2007, is a walking trail in the wooded areas in the back of the single-family development. Those walking trails were supposed to be started in November, I believe, of 2020 or 2019, I can't remember, and we've heard nothing about those either. That ends my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in the,
We have
I'm in the
anyone
back.
else back?
Gentleman with the two fingers up.
Nope, we're for 2 hours.
Will the gentleman with four fingers up like to? Your name, please?
Thank you, thank you for listening to me. My name is James Medina. I live on 13 Luzerne Drive, lot number 1 in the development, okay? And when I saw the new things, I was very concerned about, of course, the missing what they call the buffer. I don't know what that is, okay? Is it a bunch of, is it a wall? Is it trees? Is it, you know, I can't understand it. We do have a group of trees that are there now. Are they gonna be left alone? Or are we building another barrier in between? Okay? And currently, what I don't see on there, I think Laura said it before, there's a swale that goes back in there, and right next to my house. Can I walk up there and show you? Right here is a pond, and all here is the swale that goes back up there. Is that gonna stay there? Is that the swale gonna be taken down?
I'm not sure that anybody knows at this point.
Right.
Let me give you a couple things to think about. This is for all of you in the room. The purpose tonight, of course, is to discuss what you all think should or shouldn't be done with the concept plan that's been presented. The difficulty that you don't understand and is not represented here tonight is that there are 26 state agencies that have the right to review and comment on anything and everything dealing with land use planning in the state of Delaware. Among the ones that we hear the most about are DelDOT, no shock there, and the stormwater management ponds, which are through the Soil Conservation District. The one thing that I can tell you, and I think Mr. Ryman and Mr. Thompson and maybe even Mr. Thornton will agree with me, is you start at a point. When 26 agencies get done with it, it doesn't look like that. So you're correct, sir, that there are issues perhaps about the swales, but that's going to be decided somewhere else based upon the hydrology and the geography of the site. Okay?
Good, and...
You also talked about trees and berms.
Yeah.
Real quick, berms are pounded up in dirt. I think Ms. Giorgiani likes them, if I recall correctly. The trees, we try to stay away from natural vegetative growth and go to plantings that are going to be easier to maintain. You know, you don't want a briar bramble that's got a bunch of snakes and lizards in it, right? But you do want something that's attractive yet provides a barrier between you and your neighbors. So
Okay.
that will be a part of a landscape plan, assuming that we get to that point sometime in the not too distant future.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure Mike made a note on that.
Okay.
Okay.
And everybody else already pretty much said what my concerns were. So thank you.
Gentleman in the gray in the back, you still want to ask a question or make a comment? Right there. Tall guy with glasses.
Sure.
Oh, wait, you know, I missed this guy over here. I'll come back. I forgot. Do this.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Lockwood. I'm here with my wife, Julianne. We live at 37118 Fairway Drive in Forest Landing. I just had a couple of comments about the concept plan, and perhaps I don't understand what a concept plan necessarily is, but to me, it's really not very imaginative, this concept plan, and I'm hearing a lot of, well, we'll think about that, we can move this, we can think about that, and I just worry that there's going to be over-promising and under-delivery in terms of what's going to happen. One other thing I'd like to say in terms of the zoning code, 14051 states, quote, "The planned community shall be designed and construction activities shall be scheduled so as to minimize earth moving, erosion, tree clearance, and other disruption of the natural environment." That's the code that Ocean View goes by. This isn't something that the designer or the developer can just, if that's, if it works out that way, it's going to work out that way. So we would really urge in our community to have a big tree buffer or big barrier. The last thing I think anybody would want to see is a bulldozer, dump trucks, beeping, and just clearing the entire lot of every single tree and vegetation. Now, that's something that would be terrible, I think, for the community.
We'll take another look at that in greater detail at the time we get a landscaping plan.
And there's one other point. I don't understand about this 20-foot buffer because the code again talks about a 40-foot perimeter buffer. So the 14051 says to provide transition between planned communities and adjacent properties, no building shall be constructed less than 40 feet from the perimeter property line of the planned community. So I don't understand what this 20-foot buffer is. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Mr. Loper's going to help you with that.
You just read it in the words that are in the text. It's 40 feet to a building.
Correct.
So there's a 20 feet open space buffer and a 20-foot rear yard setback from the lot line that sets the 40 feet for the building.
So it's 40 feet from the Forest Landing property line?
To the nearest building.
To the nearest building?
Yes.
Okay.
Which would be made up of a 20-foot swath of open space, which would hopefully leave the landscaping, the existing vegetation, and then 20-foot backyard.
That's less than 10 yards, 20 feet.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the back? The gentleman with the two fingers.
My comments were on the same issue.
My apologies. This gentleman with two fingers. And again, I hope you got something new and different, right?
I'm going to try and do something a little different if I can, and not repeat things. My name is Bruce Rose. I live at 28 Luzerne Drive. The one piece that wasn't covered here that I just thought about is the water quality report that we've received is pretty poor for our area. And not that I understand how the development can deal with that, but if there are things that can be done to improve our water quality or prevent our water quality from degrading, that would be pretty important to the community, and I think the community of Ocean View, not just Silverwoods.
Just so I'm clear, are you referring to your storm management pond? Water quality?
No, there was a water report that came out about the minerals, metals.
We're talking about the
things like-
drinking water.
Yes,
Drinking
I'm sorry,
water?
yes, drinking water.
You're talking about drinking water. Mr.
Correct.
Ryman, real quick, the drinking water within Silverwood's proposed concept? Tide water? Okay. No wells.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I don't know how to address it, but I was bringing that up as a point for us to consider. I don't know if it's something Ocean View is supposed to do some kind of survey or anything like that, but I bring it up as a point.
well, the answer goes like this. We
Yeah.
like for everybody to be on public water, because if you're on public water, then there is no drawdown of the aquifer by wells, which would affect you if they had big wells on their property.
Sure.
But they're telling us that they're going to use public water.
Okay. And the other thing, I don't want to belabor it, but I'm just going to throw some numbers out because everybody's talking about the pool. You know, when we say the pool deck can handle 24 lounge chairs, I just wanted to throw a number out there that I calculate that there are a total of 281 units in the area. I could be off by one or two based on what's going on. But an average of, let's say, 3 people per unit, that's 840 residents. That means less than 3% of the community would be able to use the pool at the same time. So again, just to throw some numbers out that we've been talking about it, I know that we would like another pool and clubhouse. This kind of reflects why there could be a need for something like that. I do have a letter with a lot of other things, but I won't go over it because
Did
we
you
have
submit
just.
your letter earlier?
I did, you have it. I'm not gonna go through them. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
I'm gonna work my round around the corner. I'm back in the area where the gentleman in the yellow jacket is. Anything back there? Anybody want to speak? I see somebody in a blue blouse standing up with a handful of papers. I'm gonna wildly guess you'd like to address this.
Hi, my name is Randy Johnson. I live at 23 Old Forge, that's Silver Woods. I've been asked to address some of the environmental issues I've seen in here. I worked for USDA for decades.
And this
That's
is
my
yours.
handout. That's
Okay,
my
well,
handout. I don't have
Everybody
the,
up here's got one of these now, right?
I don't have one.
no,
No, they told us.
No, they-
Send it to you.
you need any more?
Wait a minute.
They're not as pretty, but I've got more. I do not have the pretty expensive stuff. This is off a printer.
You gave one to Mr. Ryman and Mr. Thompson, right?
Yes.
Okay. Fire away.
I've been running climate change and environmental programs at the federal level for the last half of my career. I was in restoration, worked for forest and rangelands as a researcher before then, so the community has asked me to address some of the environmental concerns. I applaud the progress that's been made in the design. We've come a long way, but we're not there yet. You all are already aware of the needs for protecting the environment since it's laid out clearly in the 2020 Comprehensive Land Use Plan. It suggests that we avoid high-density multifamily housing, protect our wetlands, mitigate impervious surface areas, and protect our water sources. Specifically, it suggests open space and low-density housing around wells, one of which is adjacent to Silver Woods. I'll get there. If you look at the map, this map, I've taken the concept drawing, tried to overlay wetlands that are determined by Fish and Wildlife Service and the riparian areas, which are the blue lines you can hardly see, but they're where we've discussed them already. And the little semicircle is the official buffer for the Bethany Bay Pump District, okay? So I'm concerned about two potential environmental impacts with the concept plan. And the fact that they failed to comply with the management practices suggested in your 2020 comprehensive plan. First, it fails to acknowledge existing waterways and wetlands. And second, it jeopardizes the already marginal water quality from the Tidewater well, which is adjacent to the project. Like I said, I've provided these maps. I want to point out the wetlands, which were circled in pen because you couldn't see it with the printer. These are designated by the Fish and Wildlife Service. If you put the 25-foot buffer, which the code suggests you put around wetlands, and even the waterways, which are the blue areas, that even increases the size. And if you look at the lot size in the concept drawing, they're 28 feet wide, so that's about what you'd add for a 25-foot buffer. Looking at the maps, you can see that all existing wetlands are eliminated. Note that one is already compromised by the existing construction road. I understand that, you know, this will be worked out in the future, but the concept plan totally ignores existing stuff there. This concerns me. Of greater concern is the proximity of the Bethany Bay well, which serves much of Ocean View. As pointed out, the current water quality coming from that well is legit, but it's marginal. It's very high in nutrients, other organics, it exceeds in metals, and it's high in just about everything else. What is in that area now is shrubland and forest land, which is an excellent buffer and filter for runoff and for infiltration. What's proposed here in the concept plan is a lot of impervious, a lot of asphalt, a lot of shingles, with plenty of cars, and it's been shown that urbanization is going to be detrimental to both groundwater and stream water quality. Given the fact that that well is already not the best, given the fact that with saltwater incursion, some of the wells will probably be less and less productive, and with the additional growth in the area, that well is going to be more and more in demand. Thus, the surrounding areas will have an impact on the well water. So I'm concerned that if this goes forward, the well water will get even worse, and that's going to impact not only environmental quality, but human health quality. And what worries me is if we don't take this into consideration, I mean, there could be lawsuits involved if we mess up the wells. I mean, the 2020 comprehensive plan, for the most part, says we're going to put water buffers around our waterways, buffers around our wetlands. None of that is included here. It also says high-density housing is not advised around these wells, which is what these villas are. So what I propose as you go forward is you actually get an official environmental impact statement. So you as a group can have the information available to determine the impacts on the environment and on the water quality. And I also encourage you to consider lower density housing. I know it's not in the original plans, but given the water quality we have, the new 2020 comprehensive plan, I think it's something you all could consider. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Ryman, I assume you kept notes, right? Come on. Right here. Anyone else? Ms. Shiraki, you're right around the corner. You got anybody back in your area? Thank you. Anybody on this side moving forward? Gentlemen with the ball cap glasses, that row, next row. Eagles fans?
Go Birds.
Come on up. There's always the next year, Miss Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir.
And I'm an Eagles fan too, so.
My name is,
Yes, sir.
my name is John Lance. I live at 36488 Dog Leg Court in Forest Landing, Frankfort, Delaware. Most of my comments have already been said. The biggest concern we have is about the buffers. There's 20 foot between the back of the building and the lot. What I want to bring up is the track record of how the original part of Silverwoods was developed. The developer went in and cleared all the trees up to the Forest Landing property line. In doing that, he left no buffer at all. He damaged trees that exist on Forest Landing property. We, Forest Landing HOA, had to pay to have trees cut down on our property where the root system was damaged because the way he cleared the land. There may be a 40-foot buffer between the back of the house and the property line, but the way he cleared the land, he damaged trees on our property, on Forest Landing property, and our HOA had to pay money to have trees cut down. So when he says there's going to be 40-foot, 20-foot, 20-foot, he didn't leave any vegetation when he did the original Silverwoods part. So when they say, well, we'll leave vegetation, well, his track record is that he left absolutely no vegetation up to the Forest Landing property line. And the next thing I want to say is there's a ditch and I know you talk about there's going to be more studies done. I can have pictures. There's a ditch that goes along the property line between Forest Landing and Silverwoods. Our developer left the ditch in its natural state, and you can see that it has water in it when it rains. It's part of our stormwater system. And so Forest Landing is asking that, you leave, 15 to 20 feet. There needs to be a buffer of land where this ditch is not disturbed because this ditch goes into our stormwater system. And you can see there's water in the ditch.
Are you willing to give us those?
Yes.
Would you give them to the nice gentleman in a blue shirt, please?
Yeah, you can see that there's water in the ditch. And this ditch, what I'm talking about, between all along here and all along here, there is a ditch. It's, I don't know how deep it is. 5, 6 feet deep or something like that. And it contains water. And it's part of our stormwater management system. And it's going to be within his 40-foot buffer. And if he clears the land like he did on the original Silverwoods, that ditch is going to be destroyed, it's going to be eroded and stuff like that. So that's the two things that I want to say. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gentleman in the front row.
I'm an Eagles fan.
We all suffer, don't we?
So, my name is David Ferris. I'm a resident at Forest Landing, 36780 East Pebble Beach Drive. And I'm on the Forest Landing Board, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our 353 homeowners and our board. And I have a statement, and then I have some pictures as well that I'll be happy. And somebody mentioned this already. I think Mr. Little, is that how you say your name? Mentioned this. I want to invite you to come on a field trip with us. We'll show you exactly what we're talking about, because I think it's very helpful to see, see what we're talking about. So we provided a letter, and I just want to make sure that we cover all these issues. I'm writing to you on behalf. This is from our president. I'm writing. Tom Basin. I'm writing to you on behalf of the Forest Landing Community Association regarding several concerns we have about the new Silverwood Single-Family Villa District site plan the Commission will be reviewing tonight. As you know, the Silverwood Single-Family Villa District is adjacent to the Forest Landing community to the west and south. What you may not know is that these western and southern borders are bounded by a large conveyance or ditch that is used for stormwater management. And it's our understanding that those ditches were existent before any of the developments were built. During construction of the Forest Landing community, the developer preserved a minimum 15 feet to 20 feet vegetative buffer adjacent to this conveyance. So we have the conveyance and then an additional 20 feet to 40 feet on the other, 15 to 20 feet on the other side, and then our property lines. The loss of the Forest Landing Community Association, the concerns of the Forest Landing Community Association are twofold. First is the potential loss of privacy to our homeowners and Silverwood's homeowners. Nobody wants to see somebody else brushing their teeth in the morning on the streets adjacent to the new development. Second, and of great importance structurally, is maintaining the stability of the conveyance that controls the stormwater flow around our community and into our stormwater management ponds. The proposed site plan's build restrict lines look to be compliant with Ocean View's 40 feet structure setback requirement, but the site plan does not indicate the presence of any vegetative buffer or preservation of existing trees along the stormwater conveyance. We understand that Ocean View Code, specifically the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 140, Land Use and Development, Section 140-51, Design Standards, that while there is no requirement for a specific buffer, the code recommends that the developer preserve existing vegetation. I think that's been mentioned before, particularly native trees like those that currently line the shared conveyance. With the existence of the tree conveyance that defines the property line between Silverwoods and Forest Landing, we feel it is Sussex County's and Ocean View's shared responsibility to protect the natural environment on both sides of the conveyance. Removing existing trees and vegetation up to the conveyance could cause a collapse of its bank, generating stormwater backups and flooding. We are sure that the Sussex Conservative District and DNR-EC would support our position. Therefore, Forest Landing Community Association is requesting that the Ocean View Planning and Zoning Commission attach a condition to Silverwood's Family Villa District site plan that requires the developer to maintain the natural environment, including existing vegetation, a minimum of 15 to 20 feet from the edge of the conveyance. We believe adding this condition is necessary given the developer's history with his removal of all vegetation up to our property line, resulting in root damage to and removal of large trees in Forest Landing's conservation area that Mr. Basin conveyed to you a couple weeks ago. We thank you for this consideration. I have some pictures, and I want to thank Mr. Thornton for being here. We appreciate the opportunity to explain our position to him as well. And we want to be good neighbors. We thank you for our opportunity to express our concerns today, and I have some pictures here. And I'm assuming since this is St. Patrick's Day that you guys have set up a celebration with libations in the back?
You know, we would love to join you wherever you go. We actually have 2 more public hearings after this.
Good thing we had.
Some of us will be working. You want to give these to the clerk, please? Mr. Johnny, I'm going to recognize you, but if it's repetitious, we need to kind of wrap it up.
Joe Giorgiani, 7 Favada Place in Ocean View. Happily not an Eagles fan.
All right, you're done.
And we'd invite you to the clubhouse after, but there's not enough room.
I just want to remind.
So, I'd just like a couple of clarifications.
I just want to remind you of one thing. Your wife testified first, so tread gently.
The first one is, we talk about buffers. Are buffers common areas, or are we going to call a buffer the end of somebody's property?
We're going to find out later, I'm sure, but I want to, and you may not be able to see it from where I am, starting there and all the way around, we're all taking notes.
Okay.
And we get it. Generally speaking, a buffer area will be a common area rather than that of an individual lot owner, because if it's an individual lot owner, history tells us that it may not look like what it was supposed to look like when it was originally put in place.
That's our concern. The second clarification is, when we say the clubhouse was approved for so many single-family units, was that approval based on a 3,200 square foot clubhouse?
You want to answer that?
There is no code requirement for the size of the clubhouse. The original plan did show 3,200 square foot clubhouse.
Or the size of the pool.
Or the size of the pool. But there is no code requirement for the size of the clubhouse. So there's nothing there for us to enforce.
So common sense has to prevail then. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to return the floor to you.
All right, any comments or?
I just have a couple quick comments.
Yeah, make them quick.
So just, from just wrapping up the things that I've heard and so forth, the issues that I'm seeing is really the issues with the tree buffers, issues with past commitments, and issues with the amenities, particularly the pool and stuff servicing a lot of people. Those are the issues. And so if there's anything that in the future discussions and changes of the plan that you can do to improve those things, obviously, that's what people are asking for.
And keep in mind, this is a concept plan tonight, and we really do appreciate all of your comments, all of your letters, because it goes a long ways to the next phase of the preliminary planning and then, final planning. So, Dennis, you got anything to add?
Thank you all very much. You've been very cooperative. Typically, we've had, this is the first large meeting we've had in over 2 years. And everybody's anxious to get out of the house and say what's on their mind, but you've been very professional and civil in the way you've done it, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second?
I second it.
We are adjourned.
What do you feel about that?
McDonald for Christmas when they got the 8 inches of snow.
We've been at this since 3 o'clock.
Ladies and gentlemen, please come to order. We are running about 26 minutes late. Okay. May I ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting for the town of Ocean View, Delaware. May I have a swearing in, Mr. Solicitor?
You may. Ladies and gentlemen, in attendance tonight, I'd like to introduce John Blanchard, who is our newest member of the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Blanchard, if you will please place your hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, John Blanchard,
Do proudly swear
do proudly swear
to carry out the responsibilities
to carry out the responsibilities
of the office of Member of the Board of Adjustment
of the office of the Member of Board of Adjustment
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
freely acknowledging
freely acknowledging
that the powers of this office
that the powers of this office
flow from the people
flow from the people
I am privileged to represent.
I am privileged to represent.
I further swear
I further swear
always to place
always to place
the public interest
the public interest
above any special
above any special
or personal
or
interests,
personal interest,
and to respect the right
and to respect the right
of future generations
of future generations
to share the rich historic and natural heritage of Delaware. In doing so, I will always uphold and defend the constitutions of my country and my state, so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
As we go on, welcome. It's nice to have a new member. Thank you. First place. All right, I need approval of the agenda for this evening, please.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Can I have approval of the minutes for February 17th, 2021, please?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Mr. Solicitor, would you like to take it from here?
Thank you. The first order of business this evening is application V number 2428, 85 Atlantic Avenue. It's an application submitted by Ocean View Brewing LLC with permission of the property owner CJ Pines LLC, requesting a variance from Article 10, Section 140-65, which limits a wall sign to a maximum area of 10 square feet per business. Ocean View Brewing wishes to install 2 wall signs that will exceed the maximum allowable square footage. The applicant also wishes to install a stand-alone ornamental silo structure. The Office of Planning, Zoning, and Development has determined that such a structure meets the definition of a sign as set out in Article 10, Section 140-61, and that the proposed silo structure shall be considered to be an additional freestanding sign. The applicant requests a variance pursuant to 14065 in order to allow the additional freestanding sign. Let me start with you, Ms. Schwartz. Would you raise your right hand, please? State your name for the record. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustment of the Town of Ocean View is the truth and nothing but the truth? Can you tell me, please, ma'am, if notices have been given to the adjacent property owners, and was notice of this hearing published in a local newspaper?
Yes, it was.
And all that appears a record in the official files of the commission, right? Or the board, excuse me. Mr. Lober, or Mr. Semino, golly, you look so much alike.
I'm about 15 years younger than Jim.
I'll mention that. Will you state your name for the record, please?
Kenneth L. Semino.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustment of the Town of Ocean View is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Do we have a report of some kind from the staff concerning this particular application?
We do. This applicant is seeking two variances. Number one, the proposed wall sign on the front of the building is 40.06 plus or minus square feet and exceeds the maximum allowable size by 30.06 square feet. Proposed wall sign on the side of the building facing Woodland Avenue is 78.04 square feet and exceeds the maximum allowable size by 68.04 plus or minus square feet. These signs are in keeping with the existing signs that were permitted on the buildings at the other portion of this commercial development known as CJ Pines. The Office of Planning and Development does not have an objection to this variance. Number two, the proposed silo as designed does meet the definition of a sign per Article 10, Section 140-61. This proposed sign causes the site to exceed the maximum allowable number of freestanding signs permitted on a single parcel of land. The Office of Planning, Zoning, and Development views this sign as a part of the overall design of the site and does not have any objections to this variance.
Are there any questions from members of the board of Mr. Semino? There being none, I recognize Seth Thompson, attorney for the applicant with the firm of Parkowski, Girk, and Swayze.
Good evening, members of the board and new member. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Mr. Semino, Mr. Schrader, Ms. Schwartz, and other members of the staff. Thank you. Again, my name is Seth Thompson, as Mr. Schrader said, with Parkowski, Girk, and Swayze, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And I have with me Matt Patton. He's to my left. He's the Vice President of Construction with the Sodell Restaurant Group. And the property that we're talking about tonight is 85 Atlantic Avenue, at the corner of Atlantic Avenue and Woodland Avenue. Hopefully you have a packet with you that includes the application, the receipt that the town provided, Mr. Robertson's letter from my office dated December 13th of 2021, the renderings, Director Semino's memorandum, the notice, and the mailing list. If anyone needs one, I made extra copies every once in a while. Things get lost in the shuffle. So just raise your hand. But if not, I'm happy to dive in. And I actually asked Mr. Patton to kind of be my spokesmodel, if you will, for purposes of pointing out.
Seth, will the gentleman in question be testifying?
He will. I was hoping, and certainly I'm flexible in terms of whatever the board would like. I was going to run through a presentation and have Mr. Patton then affirm any of my representations.
Let me go ahead and swear you in, okay?
Great, sure. So I will hold those for a minute.
Will you state your name for the record, sir?
Matthew Patton.
Mr. Patton, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give the Board of Adjustment of the Town of Ocean View is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Now you can go back to pretending to be Vanna White. Or Seth. And yeah, you know what? He's going to get spoiled by that. So, right?
That's right. Matt's been in charge, just so you know, Matt's history with the project. He's been in charge of permitting and construction of the brew pub here, the Ocean View Brewing. The brew pub is part of the Sodell Concepts Restaurant Group. It currently has all of its state and federal liquor licenses in place, and they opened this week. So I've gone by a couple times, and it looks busy, which is a very good sign, obviously. We're seeking, as Mr. Semino went over and Mr. Schrader noted, we're seeking a couple of different variances related to signs. So the one set of variances relates to the signs that are the wall signs, so those attached to the building itself, and then the silo structure, which the town has determined falls within the definition of sign for your code. And that's certainly understandable. I don't know that we would think of a silo as kind of a traditional sign, but we're certainly not contesting that interpretation. So in terms of, and maybe if I could, so Matt, could you point, so we have the signs, so the top rendering is the front of the building, and you should have these in your packet, but that's, so that's facing Atlantic Avenue, and then the lower portion of the rendering is facing Woodland Avenue. Okay. And let's take a look at the silo here, the proposed silo. There's currently a concrete pad for it, but that's what the silo, when placed, would look like if you approve it. And by the way, please feel free to jump in with any questions at any point. Sure.
I have a question. You were familiar with the ordinances in existence as far as signage is concerned before you put it up, right?
So the silo isn't up now.
No, I understand, but the wall signs, one in the front is up.
The one, that's right.
You were familiar with the ordinance in the town as far as the number of square feet permitted in a sign before you put it up?
May I answer that question? We were granted a temporary sign permit for 30 days, which expires on, I believe, the 24th of March.
Okay.
And if we don't receive the approval today, we'll take it down and we'll put up a 10 square foot
Okay.
sign per code in this file.
Thank you.
And certainly that's a very fair question. We're not asking for forgiveness. We really are looking for permission here. In terms of, and to kind of dive into the legal standard that's in your code and also stems from the Delaware Code, Title 22, the board is certainly familiar with it, but I'll just touch on a couple things. The variance needs to relate to a specific parcel of land, and the hardship is not shared generally by other properties in the same zoning district and facility. The variance cannot be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. The variance can be granted without substantial detriment. The benefits from granting the variance would substantially outweigh any detriment. Number 4, approval of the variance would not substantially impair the intent and purposes of the comprehensive plan or this chapter, your zoning code. And number 5, all requirements for the grant of the variance under Delaware law would be met. And I mentioned Title 22 of the state code, section 327, and your town code references that. So just kind of by way of background, the state legislature has indicated that variances can be provided when they would not be contrary to the public interest, where owing to special conditions or exceptional situations, a literal interpretation of the chapter or any zoning regulation would result in unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulties to the owner of the property, so that the spirit of this chapter or zoning regulation shall be observed and substantial justice done, provided such relief may not be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zoning chapter, zoning regulation, or map. So obviously you see in the state code language that's then reflected in your town code. I would note too, and again this is probably preaching to the choir, but in terms of analyzing the state code, the kind of seminal case is the quick check case. And basically it calls for weighing a number of factors: the nature of the zone in which the property lies, the character of the immediate vicinity and uses therein, the removal of restriction not seriously affecting neighboring properties, and failure to remove the restriction creating an unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty. So I do want to touch on one of those elements that's both in the state code and certainly in your town code, the comprehensive plan. So, and that's always a good spot to start from. I recognize that it's aspirational in terms of what it does, but it's helpful to know, all right, what frame of mind should we really be thinking about? And I thought it was interesting, I saw in your comprehensive plan, the goals would be supporting mixed and efficient uses of land, and also it includes promoting healthy and engaging environments, and encouraging business diversity and job growth. So we're hopeful that this application promotes those goals. In terms of the purposes of your zoning code, there are a number here that we think the application really promotes. And we'll go into some detail, but we think lessening the congestion on the streets, securing safety from fire, panic, and other dangers, promoting health and the general welfare, providing adequate light and air, and facilitating the adequate provision of transportation. So we think those goals or those purposes of your zoning ordinance are going to be promoted here. Speaking generally to all of the requests, the properties in the GB1 zone, so your general business district, and your code in section 140.21a identifies the intentions of that zone as being for convenience, retail, and personal service uses, and for business and professional uses that provide services to surrounding residential neighborhoods. We think we fit within that well. This district is most appropriately situated along State Route 26 corridor and certain adjacent properties, which by their location are logically part of the corridor. So we're on Route 26, Atlantic Avenue there, and that, your code calls for these to be business areas. So certainly when it comes to business, you would expect to see signage. So we're not introducing an element that people wouldn't expect. In speaking in terms of if the restrictions weren't varied, we believe there's an unnecessary hardship or exceptional practical difficulty that results to the business if it's not able to make normal improvements in the character of the permitted use. So here it's a brew pub. You're going to need some signage in terms of so that people know where it is and also how to get there safely.
Can I interrupt you for a second? There's more than one tenant in that building, correct?
This building, no, in the development, yes.
In the development, okay.
On the other, so there is an entrance off of Atlantic Avenue, and this would be if you were entering from Atlantic on the right, there are tenants to the left.
I'm assuming out loud that the criteria that you're reading through, Seth, are going to apply to both applications, correct?
That's correct. So, again, we're talking about the nature of the zone. So these commercial areas, especially along really your comprehensive plan talks about your Route 26 being your business corridor. So this isn't like putting a sign up in the middle of a residential neighborhood, right? People, and you can see it when you drive down Route 26, almost every business has a sign, as is really kind of required when it comes to doing business. People need to know where they find you, especially given the fact that you guys are a resort area and people are going to be driving in that aren't necessarily familiar with the area.
And is it safe to assume that both signs, both the wall sign and the silo, which has no writing on it, but nonetheless is a sign, are necessary for your business in order for it to be identifiable from consumers passing up and down Route 26?
They absolutely are. The silo obviously kind of fits with the motif. We would kind of think of it more as an ornament, like if you're kind of, typically people think of signs as having words. This isn't going to have any words on it, but again, we understand your definition. And maybe Matt could speak more specifically into the whole notion of the Ocean View Brewing Company's motif. Do you want to?
Sure.
How did you guys come to the idea of the silo?
So silo has been made. I've been in breweries for 10 plus years. I'm a big home brewer guy, and anytime I see a silo, I know that there's a brewery there. So it's as a beer guy and as a beer aficionado, a silo to me indicates that it's a brewery and that they actually brew there, which seems to be a question in people's mind. We do brew beer there. If the town code permitted it, we would actually use the silo. It's not a permitted use, but we still think that it indicates something important in the psychology of our guests, that there's beer being brewed here.
And this is part of the prototype design that goes with Sodell brew pubs, correct?
Yeah, we do have one at Thompson Island as well, so sort of indicates the relationship there. And if I may, this sign here, as you're driving down 26, this sign is completely invisible. So again, on the note of being able to turn on to Woodland Avenue to access the parking lot, so that's an important note.
Yeah, it really is important to kind of think about the two signs. You're not really ever going to be in a position where I recognize this rendering shows both to some degree, but that's really the only angle where you're going to do that. If you're driving on Route 26 heading east, you're only going to be able to see the one sign, but you're going to want to be able to identify the business and turn in off of that. If you're coming down Woodland Avenue going south, you don't want people then turning onto Route 26 to then turn into the shopping area there. You'd much prefer that they turn in before they get to Route 26 to keep, rather than having them enter. The reality is Route 26 is pretty busy all of the time at this point, right? So if you can have somebody, and Woodland's a pretty big artery. Frankly, this property is pretty unique in the sense that it's at the corner of Woodland and Route 26. There just aren't a lot of corner lots like that. So that's why we think one of the elements that's really important about that second sign on this side is that people won't think they need to go to Route 26 to come in. They're going to identify it right away and turn into that. There's an in-out there. Yes, sir.
That was my question. There is an entrance to the property from Woodland Avenue.
That's right. It's an in and an out. That's correct. So that's why we're hoping the second sign keeps Route 26 from kind of engaging in some additional unnecessary traffic.
Is that the only two signs? There is nothing in the back?
Correct. There aren't any signs in the back. There's
Is there a sign on the western side?
So there's a space there, but we're not asking to put up a sign there, and there aren't plans to put up a sign there. But if you went by, you would see a similar space, but we're not asking for a sign there. The reality there is that we expect people to kind of use the frontage sign versus the one that would be on the western wall.
So did we completely interrupt your presentation?
No, listen, this is much better. I like the give and take. So the other element that I think is important that the rendering does a good job of showing, when you talk about a 10 square foot sign, it would be challenging for somebody driving along Route 26 to be able to identify a 10 square foot sign right there. So if you look at Route 26, most of the businesses aren't quite to the scale of this. This seems to be a larger building than most of the businesses on Route 26, and we think that warrants the larger signs. We think it's helpful. The building's bigger, so you'd have to look around more for the sign. It's also higher up, and the building sits a little bit further back. I don't know if that's the result of a lot of the buildings pre-existing the Route 26 widening versus this one coming after the fact. But because it's further from the road, the larger sign is going to be more helpful. And when it comes to traffic, again, you're going to have a lot of people that aren't from here driving along. But these brew pubs tend to be, an attraction. We hope we're going to be a benefit to the town. We think we will be, and this helps people identify it quickly without going past it, slamming on the brakes, or having to do an illegal U-turn, anything like that. And I did kind of touch on the fact that why we think the property is unique. You're not going to have a lot of these larger buildings on corner lots that just, this property is dissimilar from the others. Although the area is commercial. So, and when you compare this size sign, I think Mr. Simino mentioned this size sign is actually pretty comparable to the project to its west, the rest of the project to the west there. So we're not introducing a new element in terms of that.
Gentlemen, questions?
I have one.
Yes.
The sign on the side of the building, the woodland side, looks to be about twice the size of the sign on the front of the building, 40.06 square feet versus 78.04 square feet. So that's significant. I'm wondering if the sign on the front of the building is sufficient to meet your needs. Why does the sign on the side of the building need to be so much larger?
Matt, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, yeah. Well, part of it is scale, just the scale of the size of this wall. And this is a fairly good rendering of how the building actually got built. But the size of this wall here, this sign would look proportionately too small to sit on that wall, which is a small thing, but it's a focus of ours, and hopefully you come to enjoy the brew pub and you can enjoy the design elements that we put inside. So that's part of it. Also, I believe that as you're driving down Route 26, this is even further away as you're coming west on 26, which is the first sign that you'll see as you approach the brew pub. So I believe that it needs to be necessarily larger since it's set back even further from Route 26.
And as we're talking about the wall signs, I do think it's important to note that, they're not occupying air and space view. They're against the wall. That's different than kind of asking for, say, a large high-up stanchion sign or placard in the front that's going to kind of obstruct views of other businesses. That's not the intent here at all. The idea is that somebody is able to identify this building easily while going at a normal pace, although we all know in the summer that pace is pretty slow. But that's the idea. The idea is that it's going to be identifiable from both areas, and it's the same thing with the silo. And I think Matt did a good job of explaining why that's important, but we will put on the record again, it's not going to be a functioning silo. There's not going to be anything stored in it.
So there'll be no standalone sign near Route 26, so that's it. Those two are the two signs.
There is a freestanding sign that's not in the rendering. It's probably a little bit, it's lower to the ground, obviously. But it exists currently and was approved, as of right. I'm happy to answer any other questions that people have.
Did you have a question of your client?
I do. So it sounds like they don't have any more questions for me. Matt, you heard everything I said. But was everything that I said true and accurate to the best of your understanding?
Yes.
All right. And do you have anything else to add based on questions they might have asked me that you might have some input?
No, I think the questions were thoughtful and you did a good job of answering them.
If you will, you'll have a seat for a second. I'm going to ask, are there any persons present who wish to address the Board of Adjustment on the topic of the variances applied for by the Ocean View Brewing Company at 85 Atlantic Avenue? Russ, is there anybody online?
One person.
And is that person asking to participate?
They're just kind of watching.
There you go. Well, with those happy thoughts in mind, Madam Chair, I'm going to close the public portion of this hearing and return the floor to you. There were 2 applications, and I would ask that you address each one separately.
All right, gentlemen, any questions? We are finished with the questions. We are finished with the public part of the meeting.
I move that the application for the signs, the wall signs, be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried, gentlemen.
And we have the issue of the silo.
Yes.
Madam,
Go ahead, yes.
I move we approve the variance for the silo sign.
The silo sign,
Silo,
just the silo.
Just the silo.
the structure
Well, we're calling it a
itself.
sign.
Yeah.
The silo, the sign, whatever it is.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried on that.
Thank you, gentlemen. The second public hearing scheduled for tonight's Board of Adjustment meeting is application number 42990 Atlantic Avenue, an application submitted by Becker Morgan Group on behalf of the owner, Ocean View Partners LLC. The applicant is requesting a special exception as required by Article 4, Section 140-24 of the Land Use and Development Code in order to establish a medical office on property zoned GB1. Ms. Schwartz, can you tell me if there was letters sent to the adjacent property owner in this application? And was there a publication in the newspaper, local newspapers of the pendency of this application tonight?
Yes.
And Mr. Semino, do you have any comments from staff concerning this application?
Application is E391 submitted by the Becker Morgan Group Incorporated on behalf of the property owner, Ocean View Partners LLC. The applicant is requesting a special exception as required by Article 4, Section 140-24 of the Land Use and Development Chapter of the Town Code in order to establish a medical office on the property zone GB1 located at 90 Atlantic Avenue. The location of this proposed doctor's office is in a commercial center that is occupied by another medical practice and an insurance broker. This use will not adversely affect the adjacent or neighborhood properties, which are also commercial properties with a mix of medical and professional services.
Chair recognizes Matt Beebe. Mr. Ryman.
How are you? For the record.
I thought I'd give Matt a start. And I know we've heard from you all night, man. I'm tired of you.
I'm back. For the record, Mike Ryman, Becker Morgan Group, 309 South Governors Avenue, Dover, Delaware, here tonight representing Ocean View Partners LLC for a special use exception at 90 Atlantic Avenue. This is a project that consists currently of a multi-tenant and multi-use building, currently occupied by a dental office, a new building that was recently constructed, newly constructed in the last couple of years. There's currently a dental office which occupies the center space. There's a business office that occupies the end. These 2 units on the end, when the plan was approved and went through planning and zoning, went through and was identified as a retail use. At this time, the ownership has an opportunity for a medical office use, which in your code is classified as a special use exception, and that is why we are here tonight for your approval. Just the legal standard for a special use exception is will the exception substantially affect adversely the uses adjacent to the neighboring property? We don't think that it will. There's already commercial, there's already medical uses in the existing building. This is simply complementing that. There's adequate parking. The parking computations do not change. There's adequate parking to serve the use. So we do not believe that it will adversely affect. And then, are there other requirements which are applicable to the specific exception being requested? And there are not. It meets all the zoning requirements. The hours are going to be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The uses will, complement well. And we don't think we'll have any adverse impact. So that is our request this evening. We respectfully request your approval, and we would be happy to answer any questions. And I have Mr. Bill Strickland here with me, representing Ocean View Partners, LLC. And then I think these good gentlemen are here as well. I don't know if you want them to speak now or as part of the public comment. It's up, whatever.
Let me ask Mr. Beebe to step forward. Mr. Beebe is the attorney representing the proposed tenant, correct?
Yes, Matthew Beebe, Benish Friedlander, Copeland and Aronoff, Wilmington, Delaware, here representing the proposed tenant, Aspira Health LLC. Just like to say, be very brief, that Aspira is very excited to serve the community of Ocean View and provide the similar sort of walk-in pediatric and primary care similar to their location on Route 1 in Lewis. And I'm joined here this evening by Mr. William Albanese of Aspira Health in case the board would like to ask any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of either Mr. Beebe, the attorney, Mr. Ryman, the engineer, or either of the 2 occupants?
Just one quick question. Just want to make sure, according to my drawing, units 3 and 4 will be combined, and the medical office will take both of those units, Unit 3 and Unit 4, correct? And that will complete then the tenancy for that building. The building will be built out then. Okay.
Anything else?
Welcome to another medical practice.
It's part of the aging of the community, Mr. Wallace. Let me ask if there are any persons present who wish to address the Board of Adjustment of the Town of Ocean View with regard to this application. There appear to be none. Mr. Carter, Sergeant Carter. Are there any ones on the...
Same person.
What do we do to wake them up? Madam Chair, I'm returning the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, we need a motion of some type.
I move a motion that we approve the variance at 90 Atlantic Avenue.
I second.
Wait, it's not a variance, it's a special use exception.
Special usage.
Correct. Okay, and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Ryan.
Be sure and stop by the office and pick up your business licenses.
This has nothing to do with Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Houston, Ivy Park. Okay.
Wait, we're still, Susan, we're still online until we adjourn.
Donna, with the packet?
Wait.
Excuse me, we're not finished.
We need to adjourn, you're still broadcasting.
I move that the meeting be adjourned.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried.
Now jabber.